Hello again and welcome to the Bionicle Inspiration series. Today we're going to do an episode about leg designs. We've not really done an episode in a while that's been sort of kind of like back to the early episodes, back to the basics of just sort of the plain Jane, normal sort of stuff, you know, the typical kind of different body parts of a mock, some of the more kind of nitty gritty stuff rather than just like we're going to be building anime characters or dinosaurs or dragons or whatever. So going a little more specific with this one, and hopefully if you're stuck on a leg design, this could give you some ideas. Or maybe you're not stuck on a leg design, but you'll watch this and you'll be like, yeah, that's a cool leg design. I've got some ideas. That's what we're about here at the Bionicle Inspiration series. So, without further ado, let's dive into some really cool leg designs. And these are kind of some crazier leg designs too. They're not your typical everyday leg designs. So, let's get inspired. The very first mock we've got today, this one here is by T. Jensen, and this is called Amazonian Warrior. So, it's a fantastic little backstory behind this, which you can check the links in the description. You can head over to Flickr and read it yourself. But essentially, it's imagining this sort of post-apocalyptic world where Jeff Bezos has become the god of the world and he has all these killer robots roaming and delivering parcels for Amazon, which is really funny and a really kind of clever, fun concept. And I don't know, I always think it's certainly, you know, unique and creative to see mocks that sort of fit that mold where they are just this sort of just fun kind of crazy thing. They're not fitting into any sort of complex, unique, made-up storyline or a pre-existing story. It's just, I don't know, some fun little real-world thing or just a sort of silly story like that. That can always be kind of clever and cool, so I think that really works here. And, you know, fitting with that, we can see the actual, like, parcel that's in his hand there, which is, you know, a nice little detail, just a little fun touch there. So we're here to talk about leg designs. Let's focus on, I think, one of the kind of the cooler part usages on this mock is the use of the sort of shock absorber kind of like piston piece here. So this comes on a variety of different sets, and there's also a couple different sort of variations of it. I think more modern ones have a slightly different spring just so it doesn't break as easily. One set that it comes in that's fairly recent and modern, not your cheapest set, but it's the new Technic Lamborghini set, a very, very cool looking set, that's for sure, but it appears in a bunch of different stuff. But regardless, it's cool because it is essentially an actual sort of shock absorber there because it has that spring in it and it works for that purpose with a lot of different Technic sets. They kind of mainly appear in Technic sets, but when I was looking up on Bricklink what sets they appeared in, they also appear in like Kylo Ren's shuttle and a few other different things. So look at the different variants for it and see which ones appear in sort of older and newer stuff if you're looking to track one down. But it's such a cool and unique piece because it has this very realistic look to it. And I think it adds this really nice dimension to this mock here because you really get this sense that these sort of shock absorbers or pistons would sort of ebb and flow and move, and you'd see the spring sort of tightening and releasing as it steps forward, or, you know, it needs to sort of bend slightly to kind of, I don't know, get over a rock or climb over some debris or something, I don't know, whatever. It's cool. I don't know. I think it's a really clever idea to play off the natural look of that piece and actually use it for that sort of specific purpose. I think it's just a very, very clever part usage there. So really, really solid and looks nice. And it's also kind of nice to note too that that's the whole sort of foot as well as just that sort of bottom of that shock absorber there. It's cool. You know, it's very subtle, very small. There's not much there. I'm somewhat surprised this mock can hold itself up. I suppose that staff is doing a lot of the sort of heavy work there. But still, you know, it's a fun, more unique leg design there that may not be as sturdy, but I think aesthetically looks really, really cool. Some other stuff that looks cool with the legs is these are the sort of, I believe those are the pneumatic tube pieces. They're not specifically the flex tube. They look a bit sort of thicker and a little bit more sort of flexible, which those more typically are because it's got to, you know, pump the air through it for the pneumatic stuff with Technic sets. But yeah, you know, really, really nice little detail there. That sort of exposed wiring does give it that sort of kind of run down, used sort of post-apocalyptic vibe, which this mock I think is sort of kind of aiming for. So I like that. I also like the inclusion of that prefab light bluish grey leg armor piece. Just I think the way that part kind of naturally looks, it does have this sort of more mechanical kind of like framing to it, almost sort of like a I don't know, like a chassis or a roll cage or something, if those are the right car terms that I'm thinking of, I don't know. But there's something that's sort of very mechanical about it, and it looks like it sort of houses, I don't know, wires or other kind of mechanical parts, that sort of thing. So again, a really nice way of kind of playing with the natural sort of shapes and textures of these pieces and using it to your advantage, because I think there's something very mechanical and robotic that fits the look of this mock, that sort of more industrial, sort of worn look, as it were. So I think that's another fantastic part use there, which, you know, you're using a leg piece as a leg piece. It's not inherently like creative or unique, but it works perfectly for what it's intended to be used for. So in that sense, it's been really well done. So yeah, fantastic looking leg design there. And of course, the more sort of digitigrade leg design there, which works very, very well. So yeah, it's cool. Really unique leg design, that's for sure. Some other stuff on this mock that I think works swimmingly is the nice pops of orange. I think most notably on the staff, the fact that that is a sort of more marbled piece there that has that silver that sort of very neatly flows into that orange. It's just naturally how that part is molded and the colors work on it. And it sort of really does draw your attention to the eyes on this mock as well, which are also that sort of pop of orange. So I love the more limited use of orange and how it just sort of subtly just sort of pours into the mock in that sense. I love just that little subtle pop of color there. I think it really works for this mock, Yeah, you could have put a few other orange highlights here and there, but I think really stripping it back, I think it just really sings to me. So I think that's really cool. And I don't know, I always like that head design with that Skrull armor piece there. It works. It looks cool. So yeah, in general, it's very nice. I also find a little thing on this one. I also really like the inclusion of the bone Hero Factory bone. That's the word I'm looking for. It's a bone. All the Bionicle G2 Skull villains had those Hero Factory bone pieces that look like actual bones. And of course, it does have that much more sort of slim aesthetic to it, which, this robot in itself does have a more sort of spiddly, robotic, sort of thinner limbed look. So a great idea to use those there because it just kind of naturally fits with the rest of the aesthetic. So another nice part use when you're using a piece as its original intention, but it still works perfectly with the aesthetic. So love your work. Really, really cool. Let's move over to another mock now. This one's by Ivan Martynov, and this is called Swarm Gear. So let's start with the legs. I thoroughly enjoy the inclusion of these Knights Kingdom leg armor pieces. Here's an older Knights Kingdom construction set. This one was Vladik, the badass, awesome villain who had, very similar leg armor pieces like that. And all the Knights Kingdom sets had slightly different leg armor pieces. Some of them sort of recycled the same pieces in different colors or just the same color or whatever. But they were really cool pieces and they work very well with construction. But I think these being used here works really, really well. The aesthetic I get from this mock is a very sort of like, I don't know, kind of like alien war machine and some sort of like kind of futuristic combat or whatever. The description sort of ties it into the Bionicle story in some fashion, but I don't know, that's sort of the general aesthetic that I get from this. Very sort of, otherworldly or alien, but a sort of very like kind of powerhouse military sort of vehicle that's sort of meant for war and would, crush enemies, that sort of thing. And I think the leg design kind of reflects that. There's this big sort of chunky, hefty, like weight to it. And I can almost just imagine the foot sort of stomping down on the ground as the ground pounds with the weight of this mech and dust sort of flies everywhere or something. There's just this weight to it. And I think it's a great idea to use that specific piece there because it is so naturally large and chunky and has sort of spikes coming out of it and stuff like that. And there's just a sort of sense of weight or power or just kind of heft behind it. And so I think it was a great idea to use that part to kind of convey a sense of weight, which isn't necessarily something you see every day on a mock. I don't really remember ever talking about that with anything, but I remember reading some stuff about like comic books and stuff and like the villain, the Juggernaut, artists really talking about when they were drawing the Juggernaut in Marvel Comics to really focus on the fact that he is this unstoppable moving force that is heavy and just impossible to slow down sort of thing. And so they were like, how can we draw this character so that you really do get this sense that he is heavy, strong, and nothing can stop it? So can you do that with Lego as well? And is it as simple as this, just using sort of really big, bulky, heavy-looking pieces to kind of give it that sense of weight, even though it might not actually be heavy in itself? So I don't know, I like that. That's at least just what I see with this. Maybe you see something a little different. But there is this sort of just heft and power behind it, which I think really fits the aesthetic of this mock. So love that there. And also just in general, using those Knights Kingdom pieces as a sort of leg/foot for a mock, just sort of placing them sort of slightly on an angle there and having the sort of end of it act as the foot. Just looks nice. It's a really cool technique and a good way of doing it. Just how you place your piece and how that can sort of dictate, what it is you're building. It's good. It's really cool. So yeah, great looking leg design there. And actually, as we move up on the leg design, we can also see the use of this cannon piece, which didn't realize it came in red, but it does. These cannon pieces appeared on a variety of different sets. You don't see them as much these days. I think the piece is to a degree discontinued, But, it came in like Exo-Force sets, came in this Alpha Team set, came in all sorts of different stuff. So you might have some lying around. They're cool pieces, and they certainly have a unique texture to them. So you could always play around with it and use it for an upper leg design like this. Something to think about. But the actual mock itself, I really, really do like it. Like you said, he tied this back to the Borok in the Bionicle story with the description, but by all means, head over to Flickr and read it yourself. And while you're there, drop a comment on this guy's stuff or give him a favorite, because you know what? He's got some cool stuff, and you should let him know if you like it. Besides the point, though, yeah, that Borok shield or sort of headpiece there being used as kind of the, headpiece of this mock works really well. And I love how he's given it these massive, pincers, like a big sort of, beetle of sorts. I don't know, this kind of, war bug aesthetic to a degree. It's really cool. I really, really dig that. And these weapons on the side just look crazy, crazy cool. Big, weird, spinning fidget spinner weapon of death. I don't even know what it is, but it looks cool. And using the old, Throwbot disc thingamajigs. Great idea, too, because it has that sort of natural kind of printing on it that gives it this sort of mechanical flair or this sort of industrial look. It's cool. It's really nice. So always cool to see printed pieces being used to great avail there. So really, really nice. And this sword blaster Zamisphere launcher thing, gun arm, looks awesome. Got some wire sticking out of it too. Just, I don't know, I can just see it sort of, firing these things out and some sort of powerful, electric laser blast and all these pew-pews and noises that come out of it. I don't know. It looks like it would be cool and fun to watch in a movie. So, it's really, really badass. I know we're talking about leg designs in this episode, but, nothing beats a good weapon design as well. So, nice to see just everything on this mock flowing together really, really nicely. And I only just noticed there's a Mutter torso as well for the torso of this mock here. That works really nicely, and always good to see a Mutter torso being used, because it's one of your older Bionicle pieces, obviously just the torso and the original Toa Mutter. And yeah, I don't know, it always makes me happy to see people using them in mocks, because you don't always see it every day, so it's cool. Really, really solid mock there. Let's move on now to the next one. This is a really unique one. It's by Victor, and this is called Kaioji Maturin of Karzahni, something like that. I love the aesthetic on this guy. The fact that it looks like he's being mutated by some sort of plague or virus, and then he's got this sort of asymmetrical, just torn up, beat up, decrepit looking body. And then the other side there, he's made up of all these different gears and looks like he's got a prosthetic leg and stuff. It's this poor Matoran, he's gone through some stuff, It's been infected and then already he's falling apart. Poor dude. And then his mask's all dirty and infected. Come on, dude, catch a break. It's cool. I think it's a really unique aesthetic. And I don't know, it tells a story and you feel empathy for the character and boo. It's nice. It's making you feel things. That's always good with your art, But yeah, let's dive deeper. So I love the inclusion of the gully hook in dark grey there as essentially the whole leg there. Even gives it a bit of a sort of knee and just the kind of wonderful curve of it. Yeah, it looks unique. It does look a bit like some sort of mechanical limb of sorts, which I guess a mechanical limb is just a normal limb on a Bionicle, right? But it looks like a prosthetic limb is the word I'm looking for, I suppose. It's a really nice design. Just a little gear on the side there. Yeah, it gives it a sort of older flair to it, and it does make it look like it's a sort of older robot that maybe needs a bit of maintenance of sorts. So it's cool. And yeah, going over to this infected leg here on the other side. The choice to make it sort of bent out and in all sorts of different angles and just bending in ways that it shouldn't and bending in ways that the other one doesn't, and that it has claws on the toes and stuff like that. It's almost the complete opposite of the other foot, and so I think that really helps to convey that sort of infected feeling that this has. It's really cool, and I could almost see an entire mock in that aesthetic where they're just this sort of completely just mutilated body that's been infected by some sort of disease or plague or whatever. It's a cool idea, and it's a good way of doing it, especially using those interesting ratchet joint pieces there. That's a great idea. I also like the inclusion of, just kind of the color scheme. I was going to say the inclusion of sand green, but I think the sand green also works really well because of the different shades of gray and the orange as well. It's just a really lovely, nice-looking color scheme. And then all that tied together with this custom mask, which was made by Socket Ball, isn't it? Let me double check. Yeah, made by Socket Ball. If you head over to the Flickr page there, you can see the note on Flickr there, and you can check out Socket Ball yourself. He's a very, very talented artist with his masks there, making all sorts of crazy recolors and painted masks and all sorts of beautiful stuff. Yeah, I love that mask. Reminds me of the old that old Mutanui game with the like infected Liwa mask and stuff like that, and how, you know, yeah, it's just cool. It's cool, you know. He's been infected by evil things, and it's affecting his mask and his personality, all that sort of stuff. It's cool. So I love this hodgepodge color scheme here. This hodgepodge of different textures, aesthetics, designs, all sorts of stuff that just works so well together and creates this sad sack, this poor little Matoran who's going through a hard time. But it's a wonderful looking aesthetic, and it kind of fits that same sort of post-apocalyptic flair that we were talking about before. So really, really cool. Really unique leg design, like I said before as well. It's awesome. And hey, it's a Matoran too. Even on a sort of smaller mock like this, you can still get a really unique leg design going. It's pretty cool. Next mock now, this is by Elephant Knight, and I believe this mock is also called Elephant Knight, but it says EK update, but surely EK stands for Elephant Knight. And I believe this is his self-mock. I'm not 100% sure, but given that that's his name, I'm going to go out on a limb and say it is. So, let's talk about this mock here. So he has a peg leg. Fantastic idea. By all means, if you're building a mock, why not give them asymmetrical legs, or why not give them a peg leg or some sort of modified limb or prosthetic limb like we were talking about before? It's a fun, unique idea. Maybe it doesn't fit the specific aesthetic you're after, but it could work really well. I also like the idea of making it this awesome, like, translucent color. Like, I don't even fully know what that is, but it looks cool, doesn't it? And it's a very unique design, you know? Is that some sort of energy blast? Like, could he hold up his peg leg and shoot people with it like a laser gun? Is it some sort of, like, I don't know, plasma conduit that powers him or something like that? I don't know, but it looks cool. And I remember those specific pieces. They were on the Pick-a-Brick wall at the Lego store. This was, like, back in 2007, I think, for me, when I was in Chicago. But maybe you're like me and you have a bunch of them because you got a bunch on the Pick-a-Brick wall. Regardless, though, I think that's just something to kind of keep in mind because, hey, I just recently had a Lego store open here in Perth where I live, which has been fantastic. I think it's always just worth noting, hey, the Pick-a-Brick store is such a valuable asset. You can get pieces fairly cheaply from the Pick-a-Brick wall and in good quantities as well. So by all means, check your Pick-a-Brick store if you have a Lego store near you. If not, do some research. Maybe there's one nearby and you don't know about it. Grab some of the pieces on the Pick-a-Brick wall and put them into your mock because it is a sort of cheaper, more affordable way of getting kind of bulk parts. And you can do interesting stuff like this, like make a whole peg leg out of those pieces, you know? Something to play around with, something to think about, that's for sure. What other stuff is on this mock? I love the inclusion of the, I believe, sticker element on the torso with the little Blacktron logo there on his side. It's just kind of fun. It's just kind of unique. I like it a lot. And I also like the inclusion of him having a cutlass. It's a really interesting way of doing a sword design like that. And nice that it sort of ties in with the rest of the color scheme of the mock as well. And he's got an elephant head. That's fantastic. You know, we need more mocks with elephant heads. And I mean, he is Elephant Knight. That's certainly fitting and makes sense. But it's a really solid looking elephant head design as well. So yeah, it's pretty cool. But yeah, overall, fantastic mock. And you know what? If you're building a leg design, think about peg legs. Why not? Final mock now. Another unique leg design on this one. This is by Sullivan R, and this is Verdant Demon. So, yeah, essentially just using weapon pieces to work as the feet on a mock. It works. I think it's pretty cool. It's a very unique way of doing it, and I don't imagine this mock can support its own weight, or maybe it can, and it's just really, you know, precariously balanced on itself. I don't know. But regardless, it's a really unique way of doing it, and it looks cool. So, yeah, by all means, I don't know, grab some weapon pieces, you know, grab more sort of spiddly-looking elements and see if you can make a mock with it like that. Or maybe you want to go for a more sort of like tripod design. So, you know, 2 legs and one at the back as well. Certainly, if you used weapons like this, it'd be a bit easier for it to support its own weight doing so. So that might be another way of approaching it if you really do want it to be able to support its own weight. Or maybe you can just build a stand for it as well. And so you've got, you know, some sort of invisible stand holding it up, and you don't need to worry about it supporting its own weight. You just want it to look good, you know? There's a couple of different ways you could do it. So definitely think outside the box with that, with your leg designs there. You know, use some crazy weird pieces. Don't even think about it holding itself up. See what you can come up with. give it a go. I think that's also important too, like experimenting with it, seeing like, okay, well, if I did use these weapon pieces, yeah, sure, it's not going to be able to hold itself up, but hey, I wasn't thinking of using that piece before because I wanted it to hold itself up, but actually that's given me some new ideas, or actually I do want to run with that. Let's find a different way of supporting it, you know? Think in different ways, I guess. It might give you some unique ideas. I don't know. Something to play around with. Some other stuff that I like about this mock is his scarf. Love a good scarf. So it's good to see it on a Bionicle here. That Rey Star Wars Ultra Build set is a good one, especially with that cloth element. We've seen it a whole bunch across a variety of different episodes of Biss. So if you've seen one at the shops, I imagine it's discontinued now, but you never know. You might find one at a local charity store, or you have one lying around or something. I don't know. Buy it, man. It's a great cloth piece, and there's a lot of different usages for it. So yeah, definitely worthwhile. Or if you're looking to pick up a set, maybe that's a set to consider getting. And speaking of Star Wars Ultra Build sets, the Boba Fett helmet here, being used in a very unique way, sort of putting it on its side there and inserting one of the Baraki eyepieces where the sort of antenna is on that Mandalorian helmet there. More unique way of using it. And you know what? Sometimes it's harder to use some of these Star Wars Ultra Build head pieces because it's so obviously the character from Star Wars. So if you want to sort of adopt your own personality with it, it's just not that easy. But doing it like this, kind of putting the scarf around it, turning it on its side like that, you instantly see it in a new light. So that's pretty cool. I like that idea a lot. It's pretty cool. Good way of doing it. I also like the weapons and specifically the hands on this mock because it kind of doesn't have hands, but it also kind of does. The idea of just using the sort of natural socket on the Ben 10 sand green arm pieces like this so that it looks like a hand is a good way of doing it, you know? I have seen that design before, but it's not something you see that kind of commonly. A lot of people tend to just go for, you know, like typical sets having like a hand socket or, you know, the posable fingers or whatever. It's a different way of doing it, and I think it actually really works on this mock. So something to think about. If maybe you're running lower on pieces, maybe you can kind of quote unquote cheat and do it this way, and you don't even have to have a hand because it kind of already does. I'm not saying that's cheating by any means. You know, you do whatever you want; it still looks good. But you know, it's a sort of a more simple approach, I guess you could say. So it's still a really good, lovely little design there, and something to think about yourself when you're building. So yeah, fantastic mock here, and a lot of beautiful mocks in this leg design episode of the Bionicle Inspiration series that we had the pleasure of looking at today. And if you'd like to have the pleasure of looking at these mocks even more, I've said it before, but I'll say it again, check the links in the description below, see all the other stuff these builders have done, leave a comment on their stuff, because they deserve a bit of love, and by all means, let them know what you think of their mocks, because they'd love to hear it. Additionally, in the description below is the submission email, so if you've got some of your own mocks that you want to see on the show, send them over to the submission email, and I'll do my best to put it in an episode where I can. Additionally, there's links in the description to my own social media, so be sure to keep a close eye on that and see what sort of stuff I've got going on over there, and check out some of my happenings and doings. That's all for today's episode. I hope you very much enjoyed. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.